This is Critical Nonsense, our high-lowbrow show about culture, science, and tech. This week, Joey and I talk about learning our lessons.
Woo! I'm not going to sing that song because I don't have the range, but this is what a Joey sounds like. I just sit with my eyes closed being like, am I going to do it? Am I going to? And then sometimes the answer is no. But this is what an executive producer and chanteuse Jess Vander sounds like.
Hi, this is Jess. Elaborate.
You're a singer. You have the range. I don't. You got the pipes.
Well, is this true? We don't know if it's true.
Is it not?
Oh, you're giving me too much credit. Sort of like a quiet by myself in the kitchen type singing. That's the range that I have. It's what I'm willing to share with myself.
You have recordings of you playing instruments and singing songs. That counts.
Okay, well, thanks.
Not that you're putting out to the world to enjoy, but like you are good enough to sing a song and play an instrument at the same time, no less, and that it sounds good. So I would say chanteuse.
Thanks.
Chanteuse. I don't know. Housekeeping, no. Just buy a sweatshirt from bonfire.com/critical nonsense.
Whoa. Almost
Is that
forgot
the right?
That even exists. Yeah.
It's still there.
Something like that. We'll put it in put it in the show notes.
Yeah, if you need a Mind Wine or fucking A or So Vanilla sweatshirt, go get it. They're comfortable. Yeah. That's it. The house is clean. Any corrections department? We've been good at live correcting ourselves, but
come after us and tell us we're wrong.
Oh,
tell us we're really wrong.
Do you want a little update from some of our prognostications?
Yes.
Just a funny, like a nonsense NFT thing that I saw that happened. $34 million in Ethereum was permanently locked into a contract that someone made on the blockchain while trying to mint some new set of NFTs, I guess, because of an error in the code of the contract. I think like they put a 1 somewhere where they were like actually like not like a binary joke. Like I think they put a 1 somewhere they were supposed to put a 0 and $34 million are just gone forever.
Yikes.
That's the whole story.
Well, that sounds terrible.
There's just one block on whatever blockchain they built it on that is
of technology.
Yeah, can you imagine? Actually, just this kind of ties into the subject you have.
Maybe you're right.
I was gonna say, can you imagine being that one person who's like, oh no, that was a $34 million digit.
Or that one employee that accidentally set off that like nuclear warning notification that everyone got. Do you remember that?
In Hawaii?
Yeah.
In Hawaii?
Yeah, where it was like, hey, take shelter. We have like a nuclear threat. And everyone was like, what? And it was a typo. It was like somebody accidentally sent a test by accident to all phones.
Yeah, it was like an employee in onboarding. There are lots of these stories online where people are like, I deleted the entire company database. Good thing we had a backup.
Goodness.
It was my first day and I deleted everything.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, this really is a good segue to our topic for today. And it is maybe not always on this scale, but it is on the subject of failure and mistakes. I had an interaction in the last 24 hours that is if not in actual scale, in my emotional feelings of what went down. It is of a nuclear level. Oh, Joey, it's so embarrassing. I'm
I'm like dying to know. You wouldn't tell me ahead of the show.
Of course, I'm making all of this build up, and you're going to be like, really? That's the thing. It will surprise absolutely no one that I am pretty fussy about my laundry. And I typically will go to the laundromat and do like a massive amount of laundry all in one fell swoop and devote my Sunday to it or something like that. But in recent times, Ryan has tried to convince me the beauty of delegating such a duty and investing in wash and fold, which is something that many people in New York City decide to do if they have the means. And it's just like, it's a whole thing for me, but whatever. I am trying to see it as a viable alternative to just me doing it myself and having a lot of coins in my bag at all times. Okay, I digress. Yesterday morning, dropping off laundry, gonna do it, gonna have someone else help me with this thing. But there's like a number of clothes that need to be hung to dry because it would damage them to put them in the dryer. And I had also forgotten laundry detergent. So I ran to go get it and I went back. And upon returning, noticed that the employee had put the stuff to be just washed but not dried already in the tumbler, which would not have been an issue, save for the fact that we had asked to be able to pick it up today, so a day later. And so I am observing that these clothes that are intended to stay wet are going into a washing machine a day before pickup, and I'm handing over the detergent, and I notice this, and I stand there, and I am silent, and I'm processing like, this doesn't make any sense. And then I start thinking of reasons of, this person is an expert laundress, like this person does this day in and day out. Like, what do I know? What do I know about laundry? Like, maybe there's a grand plan of why these clothes are going in a day before I'm going to pick them up. We had explicitly said pick up to be later. This is the longest way of saying I leave without saying a word. And this morning we go to the laundromat and the clothes are mildewy. And I'm like, I am the largest idiot on the planet. Like I noticed this. I not just could have foreseen, but foresaw and then convinced myself that I was wrong and then walked away and suffered the consequences later. And of course they were so contrite and apologized and, ultimately took it back to rewash again. But it could have been avoided. And I just didn't say a thing. And I think the overall, it's just mostly deeply embarrassing to think that I had to actually experience this failure firsthand for it to settle in and then had to deal with those consequences. And I just don't understand, why is failure the best way to learn a lesson?
Because it hurts is maybe the answer. I don't, we were joking because we've mentioned a few times, Jess and I have been, I will say Jess has been participating in a cockamamie scheme that I have contrived of where we've been like streaming our sci-fi D&D show, and this week I had like every week I've given myself like do one new thing to improve the process each week, like do this thing better, do that thing better, whatever, and figure things out along the way. I didn't need to go in being an expert streamer if I just was getting better. And so this week I tried to I made a big upgrade in the aesthetics of our stream, but it took all of this like using new software and all of these like new technical things that needed to be put in place. And it was a Rube Goldberg machine, but the Rube Goldberg machine worked, and I was so excited. And we came into the stream and it was going well.
This is the trouble.
And
That's where
then
it starts.
My brother texted me. He's like, "It looks great. The video is doing awesome. The audio is broken. What's going?" And I'm like super pressed during like, I'm like, what's not work? I'm like trying to figure it out. Turns out someone didn't have headphones in, and so we just had like an echo loop.
I definitely was part of this problem.
Got it. Awesome. But it was like, I had already fucked up the first week that we had done it, and like something was wrong with the software because I didn't test enough things. So I was like fucked up, like frustrated, moved on from it.
We'll try again. We'll get it.
I've learned I won't do that thing again. Right. And I was coming into this week with all of that same energy, and like I went through so many rounds of troubleshooting and still fucked up. And I won't mess that thing up again, but it's like you don't remember the thing until you have that like emotional, visceral reaction of like, I did the thing. Oh no. Like,
yeah.
What? I mean, have you ever sent an email that you like sent it to the wrong person?
Joey, you are a recipient. Everyone knows that one time in a celebration. Well, listeners, you don't know this. We were celebrating a project that we just completed with a brand new client, and instead of replying to just the internal set of folks' email, I accidentally replied all to the full set, including the client, with a Bitmoji of me that is the theme "We Be Grillin'." If you have ever played around with your Bitmoji, which is sort of like they're like a Snapchat partner cartoonized version of a you emoji, and it's just like this character standing in front of a cartoon grill with like a spatula and a patty. It's just, I just thought it was really funny internally, and then it was deeply embarrassing. And now every time I'm about to send a client email, I can't tell you how many times I check the subject line or the who it's sending to.
Yeah. I mean, I'm never even sending like bad emails, but having you do it once and you're like, I will check every time for the rest of life. Occasionally, then again, not even sending bad emails. Like, I'm not like gossiping about anything, but I will still go back and like check back. Like, did that go to the right person? Right. Like,
yeah,
you do it once. Like the amplitude of the emotional reaction of a failure is what makes you remember in the moment. Like, it is like the effect that just sears it into your brain forever. I don't know whether this got you, this laundry situation got you to that level, but you began this by saying nuclear.
I'm just being hyperbolic. Come on, we know me. But also part of it, I think, is that the circumstances are made ever more emotionally potent, let's say, when it was something that was avoidable, or worse, as of this morning, something that I even thought of and then sort of like pushed aside. Honestly, like the smallest version of this is when someone has the thought like, oh, I should bring my sunglasses, and then doesn't go get their sunglasses right then, and then forgets, and then goes about their day, and then is like, shoot. I had thought I was gonna get I thought, I'll get my sunglasses or an extra pair of socks or whatever it was, and then I didn't follow through, and now I am singly to blame, which is different than like, oh, I just didn't think of it and I should have, but I didn't. There's like something very unique about I had an opportunity to stop this from happening and I didn't take advantage, and now look where we are.
I mean, it is one of those funny things where you know, we were talking about this before, right? Like the, you know, like negative things have something like 10 times the effect on memory that positive things do. You remember like a bad thing that happened in your life much more extremely, and so like
parents are afraid.
Yeah. So, but there's like a version of this that is potentially a positive thing. Like, as much as I hated, you don't really see it as much anymore, but there was this wave of like, I don't know, 2008 to 2013 or 14, where it's like fail fast, like play hard, fail fast and break things, like all of that.
Startups emerging. Yeah,
like the adulation of failure. But
not the adulation, the agile Asian.
What? The adulation? Oh, I see what. I gotcha. I'm picking up what you're putting down. You got jokes. She's got jokes.
Word puns.
But like, it was always with this like joyous, like, we broke it, yeah, which is like missing the point of why like fail fast it is actually like an effective learning thing. Is like, screw up in a way that it is important enough to you that you will never do the same thing again, is like actually a useful tool for learning, right? To like put
and ideally though still safe enough that the side effects aren't devastating.
Yes. Precisely. You need to get the Goldilocks failure.
Right. And in a way, maybe this is that. Of course, this laundry mishap is just not even close to the end of the world. It's just really embarrassing for me. And
to yourself, though, you're embarrassed only to yourself. Who is there to be embarrassed of?
The vastness of that universe is just deafening. But right, no, in a sense, actually, this is great, because all it does is just light a fire under me to be more, outspoken about my fastidious laundry needs.
Well, that's what I was wondering, like, through this, right? Is this like a learning that is generalizable to other parts of your life based on the failure? I think, like, in the email, we be grillin' email, right? Like, that moment was super innocuous. Like, it was early in your career. No one was like going to be like, I forgot about it until you brought it up, and I was like, right, we be grillin'. Yeah,
that's okay. I will remember longer than anyone else in that interaction.
Yeah. But in that moment, it was like the right type of safe failure, where you were devastatingly embarrassed and no one else cared.
Right, exactly.
Like, so that you will never make that mistake again in a way where it was actually bad.
Right.
Like, so is your laundry situation generalizable?
Well, there are two things. The first thing, I'm pulling such an Aaron Powers right now. You'd be so proud of me, Aaron.
Well, if it was Aaron Powers,
it would be actually a third thing, and then there isn't a third thing. The first thing is that, to your point about how hyperbolic I came into this, is probably that it just needs, like, everybody needs to calm down. And by everybody, I mean myself. Because in this interaction, like, I made a huge mistake. And so did this expert laundress. And that it's not a big deal and won't be made again in all likelihood. Like, I'm sure that was sort of like a one-off for her, and I need
shit
not like
happens.
Exactly, right? Like, it's fine, But also, to the second thing, which I think I do in a very small scope, but could potentially learn to expand, which is that in those moments where I have a thought or a hesitation, it may be worth pursuing in a broader context. I am much better now than I ever was about, say, the sunglasses type example, where it's just easier to remember if I take care of the thing that I have thought of immediately, because it will be harder and more involved and more time probably to remind myself later or expect myself to
What's
remember
the sunglasses
later.
example?
That's where I was saying, like, the thought crosses your mind of, oh, well, before we go, I should probably like put some sunglasses in my bag, but first I wanted to do this other thing. You should just do it. Like, this is what I have taught myself, because I will forget. But
call back to last week, do it now.
Right. But in this situation, I think it may be expanding the aperture of scenarios where I apply the just like follow through on it. There would have been absolutely no harm for me to have said, like, just to confirm, we're picking up tomorrow, just so that she would remember. Like, I should have just reminded her of that, and I'm sure she would have been like, oh, thank you for the reminder, and then it would have been fine. And the fear or any hesitation in that moment is something maybe worth letting go. Of course, you have to think about the context and if some other negative side effects could occur, but this is just not one of those situations.
Yeah, I think that's like a really... There's something in what you're saying too about this idea of, like, sometimes shit happens, right? Like, the flip side of learning from failures is to overlearn failures, where you generalize a thing too far for, right? Like, your response to this could be, I will never let someone else do my laundry again, and I will like, you just take on that thing, as opposed to being like, is there a more micro thing in the same way, right? Like, in my mess up, the response could be like, just go back to recording Zooms and don't try to like make a nicer thing, or to stop doing something because you overlearn the screw up, right? Or in the Weeby Grillin example, you like, you, instead of being like, oh, I should be smarter about like who I'm looking at the subject line or making sure I'm doing this, you're like, I'll never use humor in email ever again. What a huge or mistake. Something, right? Yeah, it's really easy, because of the emotional amplitude that can be created by a failure, to like overgeneralize the learnings from a failure, in which case it can be sort of paralyzing.
Yes. And that is definitely something you would have to take and apply to yourself to make sure you're like checking yourself. I'm like, maybe don't do this, but you don't have to like take it too far. But I think this is also a reminder of another takeaway, which is that, assuming or like giving other people the benefit of the doubt is a good thing, but sometimes it's not ever like coming from a bad place or a space of lack of trust. If you are open to being someone's failsafe, like, you probably have already thought of this, but just to confirm, did you know that we're picking up the laundry tomorrow? Like, I don't want to assume, like, maybe you have a grand plan, but I just want to double check, because what is happening?
Just to confirm.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the just to confirm of like, I don't want to like, don't take this the wrong way. Like, I don't believe in you, but, and you can't overlearn that either, right? Like, I think that's what it's making me think of, is like, you don't want to get to a point of micromanagement where you're so fearful of something that then you like insult someone else. But a double check isn't so bad, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, where I'm sort of like netting out in this conversation, I think comes down to also like a reminder that you're only the main character in your own story.
I need that reminder.
Yeah.
I'm just not that important.
Well, it's not even that it's, the amplitude of the failure. Like, we've established, one, failure is a good learning tool, which we already, societally understood, or, academically understood, or however we want to look at it, right? Like messing up forces you to remember things. And also that, like, in those moments when you really biff it and like you get a immediate flop sweat of like, oh, I did the thing. Like, oh no, I sent it, whatever, I did the thing I wasn't supposed to do. Like, in the case of our like sci-fi D&D story, there's a handful of people in the world who are tracking it, but like if we lost an episode to the world, like no one's that devastated. Even if they were like entertained by it, they're like, well, that one's gone anyways, I'm gonna go eat dinner, right? No one is like sweating it, or your laundry wound up getting resolved. Like you're only you can forgive yourself for failure and remember the lessons, and the world goes on.
Yeah, it's like not just the Goldilocks zone, like the baby bear, not too hot, not too cold, but just right. Of both the failure, like failing at a good, convenient, safe time, and the lesson of like learn enough that you are aware, but not so far that you're overlearning and, it becomes a whole giant mess.
Yeah, that's the psychological safety zone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I biff it, what's gonna happen? Like I have so many funny stories about like, we were traveling recently, and I won't say the people's names, but we were traveling for work, and somehow the subject of like funny work travel stories came up. And there was a project where we were going out to San Francisco. We're doing like a big workshop. We printed some posters, and the team was still working on things. So I went and picked up the posters, and I like the person at like FedEx Kinko's or whatever, like went and grabbed them and handed them to me. And I pulled them out and I was like, oh, they look good. All right, great. I put them back in the tube and I was like, how much are they? And he was like, I don't know, like $1,000 or something like that. And I was like, there's like four posters over here. This is $250 a poster, or like what's happening? And like the person who had filled out the form had like checked accidentally like the highest end like material,
special, printed
finish,
on gold,
like it was on like golden vellum with like and they were like maybe 2 times too big for what they were actually needed, which was already still like reasonably large. So it's just like like a wall size poster on golden vellum. And we let it, like it was fine. The workshop went well. It was all within budget. Like everything was fine. But I just came back and I was like, how much do you think these posters cost? And they're like, I don't know, like $200, $150. And I was like, it was $1,000. Like, why did these posters cost $1,000? And they were just like, like. And I was like, no one was fine. We like laugh about it all the time, but those moments where you're just like, oh, I did the thing. Like,
did not need to do this.
And now every time this person does anything, they're like, we're not doing the posters thing again. We're
not doing the posters. Definitely. I have triple checked. It is the basic matte paper. Super base of the barrel.
It's on the gray math paper from elementary school. It's like a 1-ply tissue that you do your math homework on.
That really is maybe the worst paper.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think this brings us to Jess's failure corner.
Clearly, we are all still figuring out why we can't just learn our lesson the easy way, but the hard way is very effective. And if this conversation isn't any indication, I am still in the process of mourning said mistakes, but thank you for allowing me to be vulnerable in this moment and moving on. We be grillin'.
We be grillin'. Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain proflection. See, I screwed up. That was a failure.
Got it. Brought to you by Critical Errors.
As always, we'd like to thank our executive producer and fail fast, play hard, Jess
Yikes.
Vander. I don't know.
Thank you, Joey. I'd also like to thank sound engineer and our failsafe, Alex Contel.
Oh, failsafe was a good one. We'd like to thank our programming coordinator, and dude that is good at stuff that doesn't screw up, Les Jacobs.
And thanks to our production crew, the ever expert Sarah Gilbert and Nora Mestridge.
And as always, thanks, Ellen.
Thanks.
Special thanks. You know who I'd like to special thank? Groups of engineers that just like go out and make free things for people with no expectation of getting anything back. I've encountered some of these like open source engineers that are like have solved some problems and are just like, here you go, world. Like, I could charge people for this thing, but I just made it to fix this problem. Like, they're out there doing God's work, just being like cool dudes, you know? And like the three that I'm thinking of right now are dudes. Maybe also like just lots of other cool people doing things out in the world. But, you know, shout out to you angels of the internet.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who has offered me grace and patience in any mistakes that I have definitely made over the course of any interaction that we have shared. If you're listening, thank you, and I'm sorry.
That was my first failure this week. That I've never
had another failure prior to this moment.
No, that was the first one.
That whole sound check thing was the first time.
Yeah, I can't think of a single thing else.
I do love if you have, what's your first memory of a failure? I would love to know what that is. If anyone wanted to send that in, I would love to know it. Like the first of your memory, what is like the first standout failure?
Falling out of a tree when I was like 3 years old.
Nope.
From in my memory, it feels like it was like 30 feet because I was like just falling and bouncing off branches as I went down, but in reality it was probably like 12 feet because I was 3 years old.
You're right.
You know?
It was like definitely not that bad.
Yeah.
Oh, that is a little traumatic.
Yeah. Like, okay, gotta be safer climbing trees.
I used to love worms and helping garden, and by
That's
help
it.
garden I mean like play with the worms in the garden. And one time I got a little overeager and I tried to bring one inside, and I thought that if I got a wicker basket and put dirt in it that I could just put the worm in and it would be happy to stay in there. But instead the worm tried to squeeze out of the wicker basket, and in so doing like destroyed itself, and I was devastated. I was like, oh my god, this is the most gruesome worm death I could have imagined, and I didn't know what I was doing. It was so sad.
Gruesome worm deaths. Yikes.
I'm sorry,
well,
worm.
Thanks, worm.
Special apologies to all of the things that we've
special
broken.
apologies. Apologies. If this was a special apologies, I would just be sitting here for
too long.
days.
No.
Here are all my apologies. To to my first grade teacher, Miss Moran. like that's where it would be going. All right. Well, have a good weekend. Love you. Thank you. Sorry. Bye.
Bye.
I don't have the range.